Estrid the Masked. A lot of people tend to regard her as the worst band commander in that box. I don't really understand why. I don't know who these people are, but I see it and I don't get it. So her +2 is untap each enchanted permanent you control. That's pretty easy to abuse. Her -1 is create a white aura enchantment token named Mask, and it basically gives something totem armor. You enchant a permanent with it, like a land, for example, which could be untapped with her +2 once it's enchanted, and it gets totem armor. So that's pretty good. And then, since those abilities aren't good enough, her ultimate is put the top 7 cards of your library into your graveyard, return all non-aura enchantment cards from your graveyard to the battlefield, then do the same for aura cards. The most important part of this card is the fact that it returns all, and it doesn't return all that were put there this turn, or all from that 7, it returns all. So halfway through the game, if you alter, you could bring back like 20 enchantments. It's really, really good. So I would say she's pretty underrated. This is definitely my most oppressive deck in terms of staxiness and everything. I've only actually been able to play it twice in a play group because no one will let me play it anymore. So that's kind of sad. I have to go find more people to abuse. With this deck, just to clarify, abuse with this deck. 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 Yeah. So Wargate. Search for basically an enchantment, convert mana cost X or less, put it into play. You can pretty much win the game with this card if you can resolve it, because it can get you stasis and stuff. I love the unhinged. Unglued. Unglued are my favorite basics. I like unhinged. They're all nice. The full arts are all nice, but these unglued islands remind me of the art cover from Forgotten Realms and those 80s tour and 90s tour fantasy books that I used to see when I was a little kid at this used bookstore. And it just really has a really classic rock parchment vibe to it that I'm just really enjoying. Vibe probably wasn't the right word. Aesthetic is probably the better word. Fight me. Next, we have Reality Acid. I love this card. It's not the best card in the deck, not even close. You enchant a permanent. The card, Reality Acid has Vanishing 3. When Reality Acid leaves play, the enchanted permanent's controller sacrifices it. This thing goes all the way back to obviously Planar Chaos, where you used to use it with Dreamstalker. I think it was one of the pre-con decks they had. Anyway, so I've been having a lot of fun with this card over the years. There's a little bit of stuff you can do to abuse it, but not a ton. So does it deserve a place in this deck? Not really, but I like it. Sarah's Sanctum is an auto include. You have to have it in this deck. It is reserve list. It is kind of expensive now, but since it's reserve list, I don't see it going anywhere price wise. Anywhere but up. So I think it's worth picking up. Yavimaya Enchantress. It is important to have some beefy boys in this deck, and she qualifies as one. I think the enchantments that give it +1/+1 for each enchantment and flying, stuff like that, those are really good. Might be slightly better. So Brago is in here. So he, obviously combos with Reality Acid, and he does help with some of the Enchantress triggers that are based on when the creature or when the enchantment enters the battlefield, and aren't based on whenever you cast it or play. So, he helps with the copy enchantment effects. He's good, but he brings a lot of hate, so you just kind of have to be careful with him. He does allow you to let's say you have a bunch of lands with enchantments on them, and you already use Estrid to untap those and tap those again for mana. You could blink those enchantments off with Brago, put them on untapped lands, and get a little bit more value out of them. So yeah, he's a good card. Estrid's Invocation, it's basically copy enchantment, except at the beginning of your upkeep, you can blink it to keep changing your targets for the enchantments. So it's a good card. Definitely a good card. Ajani's Chosen. This card makes you armies. It's really one of the best like token producers in the deck, because it's not like during your upkeep or like once per turn or whatever. So he can really he can get out of control. And again, he's based on when an enchantment enters the battlefield, not when you cast or play. So that's nice, certainly. Abundant Growth, a simple 1 mana. It draws you a card when it enters. You're probably going to have an Enchantress out, so you're probably going to end up paying 1 mana to draw 2 cards. And it just helps you, fix your mana a little bit. I do include Hall of Helios Generosity. I think it's worth having. It's a little bit slow because, it puts it on top. But, overall, it's pretty good. Story Circle it can be good. It's obviously better against monocolor decks, and it's better in single player. I think it's still good enough to include, but it's not great against things that are infinite, stuff like that. So it's definitely one of those cards that looks better on paper than it actually ends up being in real life. I have a Moat on the way, so I'm probably just going to cut that and put in Moat instead, honestly. Dawn's Reflection, one of the enchantments, ramp cards that you put on your lands so that Estrid can untap them. Ghostly Prison, I like this. It reminds me of Swords of Revealing Light from Yu-Gi-Oh! Yes, I used to play Yu-Gi-Oh! You're allowed to do that even as a Magic player. So just like stop your whining. Ghostly Prison, awesome card, super necessary. Russian Time Spiral Foil Forest, it's pretty cool. I like it. Prison Term, I honestly don't get why I don't see this card in every single white deck. I always see like pacifisms, or like obviously you get like the Oblivion Ring and like the other stuff like that, exiles until it leaves the battlefield, but Prison Term is so good. You can move it whenever a creature comes into play under an opponent's control. You can move it onto that creature. I mean, this card is insane. You literally can just pick whatever is the most dangerous thing. Like every time someone plays something more dangerous, move Prison Term to that. I don't get why this card doesn't see a lot more play. It's absolutely insane, and it still prevents activated abilities from being played. I don't know. Oh, and just, also, when that creature comes into play, you may attach it to that creature, and it doesn't target. So it's kind of like with Zur, when Zur has Shroud, and you can still put them on him. So yeah, it's really good. Soul Ring, pretty straightforward. Let's see. Flooded Grove. Oblivion Ring. Let's see. Pretty straightforward card. Obviously, great art. Let me just go back to this card, okay? I miss these F&M promos so much. Like this one too. I have no idea why this stuff stopped, or why like good ones like this stopped. I really miss the player rewards program where they used to mail you cards based on how like the Texas promos. I got my playset of Cryptic Commands. I got my Wrath of God. I got my Damnations out of that stuff. I mean, it was such a great program, and I haven't been to F&M in... the last time I went to F&M was probably Zendikar, like original Zendikar, honestly. It was the last time I played in F&M. It's just not worth it anymore. I just don't enjoy it. So many reasons, but it was just really disappointing to see this program go away. I'm not even going to go out down this road. Like, it's part of a lot of other problems. So Wrath of God. Speaking of which, I love the art on this. The Damnation art, honestly, I didn't like as much. I think that if the Kevin Walker Damnation art from Planar Chaos had been put onto the full art promo foil, that would have been absolutely incredible. I would have loved it. Anyway, I think this Wrath of God art is awesome. And of course, you want to have Wrath of God in a deck that people are going to be attacking you all the time. Journey to Nowhere, great card. It has, that's the split wens, the split triggers in it. So like it does have the potential for abuse. Privileged Position, speaking of abuse. I don't have Greater Oromancy because it's like $40 and it's going to get reprinted eventually. So it sucks. I wish I had it, but I just, on principle, I can't bring myself to get it. So Privileged Position is really good still. If you can clone it with like Copy Enchantment or Estrid's Invocation, then you're going to have a good time. So that really is kind of one of your priorities, is to get this thing out there and get it cloned. Starfield of Nyx. This card is really, really good. At the beginning of your upkeep, you can return an enchantment card from your graveyard to the battlefield. And then it animates all of your non-aura enchantments as long as you have 5 or more enchantments. So this card's really good. It's definitely a big threat that gets targeted pretty early on. Mirari's Wake. It's Mirari's Wake. I mean, this has been an EDH staple all the way going all the way back to when I used to play Teneb as my junk commander, back when Teneb was the best and only really junk commander you could play. I remember when I picked this thing up, and it was game changing. The amount of power you get out of this card is so awesome, so much fun. So Blind Obedience makes your opponent's creatures and artifacts enter tapped. It really does slow them down. People kind of shrug it off when it comes in at first, and then you just keep reminding them that's tapped. That came in tapped. That comes in tapped. You can't tap that. Guild of Lotus for mana right now. That comes in tapped. You can't attack with Krenko. He came in tapped. No, you can't double your guys with Krenko. He came in tapped. Like, it's obnoxious certainly, but it really helps you stay alive. Sun Titan. It's a great card. In an enchantment deck, which is mostly permanents, such a good card. You have to run this. There's very few cards in the deck that can do what it does. There's very few cards in Magic that can do what it does. To that extent, or to near that extent. I mean, there's none that can do it as well as he can. So, awesome card. Verduran Enchantress is fine. It's a redundant Enchantress. Unfortunately, a lot of them are based on when you cast or play it rather than when it enters. So that's kind of a negative. Plea for Guidance. I think that this is an underrated tutor. I know it's 6 mana. But again, we're talking about EDH. So fine. Yeah, probably don't run it in CEDH. But if you're just playing regular EDH, which, most people, that's what you should do anyway. Like, just, it's a fantastic card. You can look for a copy enchantment and like a card you wanted to copy. You can go grab like degenerate cards, whatever you want to do. Awesome card. Replenish. It's, hands down the best enchantment reanimation card in the game. It only does it for you, not your opponents. So again, it's just the best. No question about it. Sigil of the Empty Throne. This is, one of your win conditions. It is a big threat. People will be scared of it. They have every right to. This thing creates an insane board very quickly. So it's definitely a big threat. Basically just pray it doesn't get exiled with Revoke Existence. Light Minefield is probably one of my favorite anti-creature enchantments. I love the flavor text on it. I love the fact that you just have all these goblins sitting around in what's going to blow them up. And the fact that you just know they can't resist like screwing with it. It's also a great card, like as a card. So it doesn't limit the attackers to being towards you. So whenever any of your opponents attack, it deals damage to each of those creatures equal to the number of attacking creatures. So it really messes up everybody's combat plans, and it can polarize some of the people in your pod to protect you a little bit, because it will help protect them against the aggro player. So it's actually a decent political card, which I very rarely examine the political impact of a card, unless I'm talking about a group hug or group slug deck, but this would fall into that category of being beneficial to you from, you know, the political perspective. So it's a good card. Imprisoned in the Moon, you know, this is kind of like Lignify and Darksteel Mutation, basically. It's a really good way of dealing with people's commander. Probably, in my opinion, is the best way to deal with someone's commander in Magic in general, not just, you know, in an Enchantress deck. I mean, yeah, you can obviously say Nevermore also is one of the best ways of dealing with someone's commander. I just like that this card is more flexible and that you don't need to get their commander back to the command zone to make it, you know, stop them from casting it. It just nullifies it. So very, very good card. To Faeries Moat. So, you know, Moat is better. But the thing I do like about Teferi's Moat is that it makes it so that creatures of the chosen color can't attack you, and not just attack in general. So you could still send some of your like big Enchantress creatures on the ground. You could still send them after people. So I think Teferi's Moat has a place in the deck. I don't think that it's entirely redundant with Moat to the point where you would need to cut it if you put Moat in the deck. I think it just, you know, serves a different purpose. And of course it's signed and foil, so why would I get rid of it? Stasis, you have to run it in the deck because most people are going to assume you have it. And since they assume you have it, they're going to target you as if you had it. So at that point, like, you should put it in the deck. And don't be afraid to use it against people because they'll be nice to you until they're not. Very pretty Lorwyn Forest. You know, I really should have been showing all my pretty basic lands in all my decks because I have so many nice lands in so many decks. I focus a lot of effort onto hand picking every single basic that goes into a deck, and even just a lot of the lands in general. Vencer. So funny story about this Vencer. I was at my friend's house back in the day, and he had a lot of Magic cards, but he was really like disorganized, and his cards would kind of have a tendency to be everywhere that you could imagine. And I found this Vencer on the floor under his office chair, and somehow he had not managed to roll over it. But I was just like, dude, like, you have this Vencer on the floor. And he's like, oh, I guess I did. I was like, I'll trade you for it. He's like, you can just have it. I was like, all right, that's nice. Thank you very much. But like, damn, dude. And even back then, this guy was, God, I think foil Vencer back then was like $50. It was an expensive card at the time. So yeah, office chairs, Magic cards, you know, they're scary things. Bad things happen. You know, keep your cards in boxes and binders, not loose. If you have a cat especially, don't leave them loose on your desk. Enchantress's Presence. You know, it's an Enchantress deck. So, you know, this card is that. I should have bought the one from Onslaught. I kind of hate myself for not doing it. I used to own it from Onslaught because I actually played Enchantress in Legacy many years ago. But yeah, so it's a good card. Burgeoning, I'm not 100% sure on. It's been good. It's been bad. But the problem is, like, when it's bad, it's bad. So it's... You know, a lot of times it ends up just being 1 mana to draw a couple cards from Enchantresses. So from that perspective, can you really say it's a bad card? No, you really can't. You know, why they didn't use the Planar Chaos version again, I don't know. Maybe, you know, it's the type of thing you shouldn't even care about. Maybe I shouldn't even care about it. I guess it doesn't really matter. But anyway, here's Mesa Enchantress. You know, another Enchantress effect. Certainly important to have. I guess from this video forward, I'm going to start showing my shiny basics. So kind of bear with me. My nice 10th edition Forest, Swampy Forest, Shadowmoor Forest. Ooh, very nice. Kind of wish you could see the field like foiling. A little bit there. Okay. Anyway, off topic, but I loved Lorwyn Block so much. I loved the aesthetic of it. I loved the tribal creature themes. I felt they were very well put together. Shadowmoor was really awesome. I really enjoyed Shadowmoor. And Time Spiral, like Lorwyn Time Spiral Standard, was probably one of my favorite times of Standard in Magic. I did enjoy Shards Lorwyn as well, or like Lorwyn Shards, but Time Spiral Lorwyn was really fun. Anyway, next card, Enlighten Tudor. This is a staple in any enchantment or artifact deck, if it has white in it anyway. Pendulum Miss, I'm not 100% sure if I'm going to keep it in here. It's really only good against specific decks. And even the decks that it is good against kind of can get around it. Like, Krenko can just sacrifice goblins to Skirk Prospector. So, I don't know. It's good, but it's not really the best, is kind of what I'm saying for like the 5th time. Kill Switch. First of all, whenever I activate it, I say Kill Switch Engage. So it's corny as hell, and I love it. Also, there's a lot of artifact decks in Magic and EDH, and you got to be able to deal with them somehow, and this is kind of a good way to do that. And also Kill Switch Engage. City of Solitude. Reserve list, first of all, just got to point that out. It also makes it so people can't counter people's spells, which I'm a big fan of. Kind of makes people mad. I will say that foil Port Town does look pretty nice. Kind of got that ghosty boy off there, all shiny. Yeah, there you go. That was kind of... never mind. Regrowth, probably one of the most important cards to have in any green deck. I do, unfortunately, not run it in all my green decks, but I should. Super good card. Copy Enchantment. Estrid's Invocation, Copy Enchantment, those 2 cards, they should be in every enchantment deck that's got blue in it. Copy Enchantment, I kind of don't like simply because it's like $15 right now and it hasn't been reprinted. So again, it's one of those things ripe for a reprint. I've ended up cutting, and I've sold the rest of mine off. I only kept the one. Just, risk management. Argothian Enchantress. Again, I should have gotten the one from Urza's Saga. Anyway, she's great. She is the Enchantress. All right, so we got Satyr Enchanter. He's fine. Again, it's whenever you cast an enchantment spell, you draw a card. Pretty straightforward. It's redundant, but it's good redundant because card draw. Winter Orb, I think you got to run it. It's annoying, I get it, but you got to run it. Eidolon of Blossoms. She, in my opinion, is the best Enchantress in the entire deck. Because it's whenever she or another enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. Doesn't require it to be cast, and that is such an important factor to consider. Island Sanctuary, because you have so many enchantments drawing you cards typically, you can almost always get this card and keep this card online. And it is helpful for you, but unfortunately it doesn't block flyers, so you can find yourself getting domed for 1 billion from like dragons and stuff. I do run Alchemist's Refuge. It is definitely worth running. Sphere of Safety, of course, is the best in class for that effect. I do also run Propaganda, so they're both really good. You want to have all 3: Propaganda, Ghostly Prison, and Sphere of Safety, but Sphere of Safety again is the best for sure. Here we've got Fertile Ground. I do like the Lorwyn art more than the Invasion art, and it helps you with mana fixing. Of course, you want to have it. Sterling Grove. It's really good. There's no argument against this card. The only thing you just have to remember is it makes your other enchantments unable to be the target of spells or abilities, so it can be a little awkward sometimes. But it's very it's very rare for that to be relevant. And the fact that it can tutor for an enchantment put on top, it makes it pretty good. Shiny Forest, Kamigawa. I like the lands from Kamigawa. In fact, my draft set lands are all Kamigawa. Supreme Verdict. It is, you know, uncounterable board wipe. Ancestral Mask. I don't run many Boggles effects, or, you know, sorry, I don't run many Voltron-y type cards, but this one I think was a necessary exception to that rule. You got to be able to kill people somehow. It's a pretty good one. Winds of Wrath. Destroy all creatures that aren't enchanted. You know, you can use the totem armor created by Estrid to protect your creatures. Honestly, it ends up most of the time just wiping my board anyway, because my guys almost never have enchantments on them because I don't use auras that much. But it's still a board wipe, and, you know, sometimes you can have your creature survive. Humility is 100% necessary in the deck. It does turn off your enchantresses, so that's annoying. You have to be careful there. But it does the rest of the job that Moat, you know, it finishes what Moat starts, basically. There's certain commanders where you need to use this card, you know, without question. So Humility is an auto include in the deck. It's also on the reserve list. We've got Overgrowth, which is, you know, fine. Gift of Paradise, which sometimes I like, sometimes I don't. I will say that it is hard to keep track of which lands are making the land produce an additional 2 mana, or which lands are tapping for 2 mana as a result of the enchantment, especially in the 3 mana cost department. Swan Song, it's a blue deck. It has Swan Song in it. Decree of Silence is probably one of my favorite enchantments to play because it drives people nuts. And it's also like a really old, like classic win condition. So I love Decree of Silence. You can cycle it to counter a spell. It also combos very nicely, or not nicely, with Solemnity. And so basically your opponents can't play spells the rest of the game. Well, I mean, they can. But their spells get countered the rest of the game. So it's pretty cool. People don't typically expect that combo, so get ready to really trigger some people, and also just like, I don't know, they'll target you after that, like the next game. Omniscience, the deck has a lot of like spells in it, and a lot of them draw you cards, so typically if you play an Omniscience and get to stick it, it's pretty easy to win the game from there on out. Honestly, this is probably one of the worst cards in the deck. And I know like it shouldn't be. Making enchantments cost 1 less should be good. But for whatever reason, honestly, I've always found this card to just be so underwhelming. And in almost any given situation, it does not help me enough. For whatever situation I've gotten myself into, this does not address whatever it is in a sufficient manner. So, I don't know. He's also something I could cut for Moat. Academy Rector. First of all, I just want to say GPs and their HP binders are some of the absolute best resources for EDH players to go buy their cards. I got this in an HP binder for $5. Granted, it was a few years ago before it spiked, but it was still like a $15, $20 card at the time. But, oh man. Anyway, Academy Rector, it's an auto-include. It's Academy Rector. Reserve list, everything, you know, it checks all the boxes. Luminarch Ascension. So, if you're going to drop this card on turn 2, which is, you know, definitely stupid, and definitely something you should do, make sure you can drop, like, a Stasis on, like, turn 3 or something, because, or, like, a Ghostly Prison or something, because this is a really good way to make everybody try and kill you. Weirding Wood. It's another one of those. It adds 2 mana. The Enchanted Land adds 2 mana, not 2 additional mana. It makes a clue token, which is sack this artifact to draw a card. So, I mean, it's like, it gives you card draw too, which is actually pretty sweet. Open the Vaults is worse replenish. But, hey, it's redundant. You're going to need it. People blow your stuff up. No question about it. So this deck, as far as Estrid decks goes, is probably one of the better ones that I've seen. I have played against quite a few Estrid decks, and let me rephrase that. I haven't seen an Estrid deck yet that is better than this. But they're definitely out there. I'm sure there's some CEH ones. Obviously, my mana rocks aren't really even existent. So, Mana Crypt, Mana Vault, they could be in there. Moat should be in there. I'm sure I'm missing some other stuff. I haven't really thought about it. This deck I haven't thought about recently. It's just been kind of sitting on autopilot. I did stumble upon this Solemnity in someone's binder one time and just like looked at it and was like, oh, Decree of Silence, that looks like that would work. And sure enough, it does. So unfortunately, this deck hasn't really been updated that much, but I will check the new set and see if I can add anything to it, from that new set.